Hey Kingdom family, this is for you. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. Brotherhood, man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say we are dreamers, but we're not the only ones. No, I hope someday they will join us, and the world will live as one. No, and the world will live as one, and we all will live as one. Yeah, and the world will live as one. Kingdom family, and the world will live as one. Kingdom, 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 here we are. That was a little track that we did last night at the concert, and I know so many of you all were there at the Pandemic of Love concert. It is a great honor and a great privilege to be here with all of you today, as it is every single Sunday. We're on our 35th week of the kingdom, all of us here rising strong. And I see you all here today. I want you to type your names into the chat box. Where you're coming in from, into the chat box. I see you. Hello, Alonzo, who was in the show last night, Sally and Evie and Carrie, Khalifa, Jerry, Emily, Jacques, Victoria, Melanie, Barbie, Allison. So type in where you're chiming in from today. And if this is your first time here at the Kingdom, I want you to type in first time here in the chat box, and you'll see our entire community will welcome you with open arms as we stand in and rise together. And so today, we are in for a dynamic conversation. But before we even get into any of the conversation, we want to really just take a moment to go through our values here, our belief statement here. And this is really a prayer kind of anchoring us back into why it is that we've been coming here, a community 1,371 people strong, every Sunday building for the last 35 weeks. And we see you from New York, Maui, St. Louis, Vashon, Washington, Vermont, Sacramento, Santa Cruz, Houston, Connecticut, Oregon, London, first time. Hello for the first time from London, Colorado Springs. Everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. La Mesa, New York. We got 2 Maui's in the house. All right, so we believe here at the Kingdom, I see you, Ontario, that all beliefs are welcome here. We believe that all biologies are welcome here. We believe in the power of music to open our hearts and our minds, so we often start the Kingdom with a song or a poem. We believe that wisdom can come from many places, and here at the Kingdom, we believe in an expanded definition of self. An expanded definition of self, meaning that we know that we are not just the individual me in this skin-enclosed body, but that we are an expanded definition of we, all of us coming together. Here at the Kingdom, we don't just honor or tolerate each other's differences, but we know that we are stronger because of them, which is going to be a major, major component of our conversation today. And ultimately, we rise together. And so from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, to Ontario, to London in the UK, to Massachusetts in the Berkshire Hills, all of you from all over the world, we welcome you. And for those of you who it's your first time, this is our format every single week. We always start with either a poem or music or a song, and then we go into a prayer, and I'll lead us through a short prayer, and then I will always leave about 60 seconds of silence for you to welcome in your own personal prayer. And I have a vision that one day we'll all be standing together in person with all of our different religious prayers, all of our different spiritual prayers, out loud in all of the different languages coming together, all the different beliefs coming together in a beautiful sound all at once. And if you're not religious in any way, just take the 60 seconds to set your intention for the time. And then we'll jump into a teaching or a conversation, which today I have a very special guest whose first time, it's gonna be my first time interviewing him, and I'm very excited, followed by a practice, a golden nugget, and a power action so that you can take some of these teachings out into your life and into the world. So all of that being said, let us begin with our prayer. Hands over your chest, right over the heart. God, Spirit, universe, all that is, all that ever has been, and all that ever will be, we thank you. Thank you for bringing us here together across what may be perceived as divides, and thank you for letting this community be a beacon, an example to the world that we can and we will and we are coming together. May all the words that are spoken and shared today be for the benefit of all. May they inspire us to dive deeper into our conversations with our friends and our families and with one another and with ourselves. May we remember that when we are looking at someone across from us or someone who we perceive as different from us, that we are really looking at a reflection of ourselves. And that even though sometimes we may other ourselves and others, that we are all wanting and desiring that same sense of fulfillment and purpose in this life. And may we remember that underneath it all, way underneath it all, it seems sometimes, that we are one in your vision and in your name. This is your moment now to welcome in your personal prayer or intention. God, Spirit, universe, all that is, all that ever has been, and all that ever will be. Thank you for bringing this community together. Please protect our words and our actions and our thoughts today so that everything that's spoken, even if it triggers us in some way, can inspire us to live better, to be better to ourselves and to one another. So it is. Ashe, Aho, Salam, Shalom, Amen, Satnam, Awen, Om. Thank you. So here we are, Kingdom. Here we are, here we are, here we are. I see you all here. And we have a special session today. Let me just plug in my headphones for a second. So I'm very excited for today's special guest. And before I get to introduce you to him, I want to tell you about the magic that ensued last night. So many of you know last night we had our concert, Love Over Fear, our concert that was supporting families and children who lost their parents to COVID-19, which was absolutely incredible. We raised almost $10,000 last night for families because of all of the love and the care and the support that you all brought forward. And so we're so grateful. Tito Ray, Alonzo, and I, and the whole team that put this together are so grateful. And we'll have some videos coming for that for you soon. And today, at the end of our session at the Kingdom, I'm gonna be showing you the song, or the performance of the song last night. We world premiered my brand new single, Believe. And what we're doing for the entire month of March is every single 100% of all streaming royalties from Spotify or Apple Music go directly to the family. So if you couldn't donate last night because you're in financial need, or if you weren't at the concert last night, or you didn't even know about the concert last night because this is your first time here, I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. But you can actually stream this song, Believe, on Spotify or Apple Music. Literally what people did last night is this was one of my friend's ideas, they actually played it on repeat overnight and turned the volume all the way down and just played it over and over and over and over. And this way we can literally raise money for these families in our sleep. It's absolutely incredible and something we can all do together. So I'll show you that performance a little bit later. You'll be getting the first sneak peek of that. But before any of that, we're diving into a deep conversation today on the power of healing conversations. Healing conversations. Now, it's interesting because once upon a time, when we were talking about this topic, we called them messy conversations. But there's no point in having messy conversations unless you just want to be messy and gossip if we're not trying to actually make them healing. Healing for ourselves, healing between one another. And there's no one better in the entire universe, I don't think, that I could bring on to have this conversation with me right now than Jeff Krasno. So Jeff is like a brother to me now at this point, and really, many of you probably heard my interview on Jeff's podcast. Jeff is the co-founder of Wanderlust, which many of you have heard of the Wanderlust Festival and the Wanderlust Studio that was in Los Angeles. So Jeff is the co-founder of Wanderlust and is also the founder of Commune, which has a lot of different platforms, but ultimately it's a media platform that creates spiritual and healing courses that are online video courses for the whole world to share and be a part of, that are super accessible to everyone. There's a podcast. Jeff writes a Sunday paper every single week, which lots of things that we call commusings. And we're gonna dive into the power of healing conversations together today. And so Jeff, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the Kingdom. Everybody say what's up to Jeff. Hands up for Jeff. What's up, man?
What's up, Justin? Wow, amazing.
Welcome. You got the whole kingdom spell for this morning. So
I know. I'm in its aura quickly, and
Yeah.
this is such a delight to be here and to be part of what you have created. Obviously, with Commune, our whole goal is to create this global community, and you're doing it right here. And so much of how you've grounded the show resonates with me, inviting people in of all faiths and belief systems with this notion that behind all of those things, there's this consilience around a shared morality and ethics, and from which compassion and forgiveness and empathy emerge. And I can already sense it and feel it. And so it's just been a delight to just get to know you like a brother over the last year.
Yeah.
And really feel so comfortable with you sharing thoughts and having conversations that are bristly and thorny and sometimes messy, but with a healing trajectory.
Yeah, and so here's amazing. I think Jeff, it feels really cool. So Jeff's interviewed me on his podcast like 3 times before. Like I've been a recurring guest, thankfully, and
Yes.
we're going to talk today about healing conversations. And obviously, we have a short amount of time to kind of teach you some stuff today here in the kingdom. But for those of you who end up wanting to take this further, we're super excited because the big surprise that I have announced if you've been watching on social media, but I've actually created a course with Commune called Healing Conversations. And really, Jeff brought me in to create this course, and we're going to tell you more about that course later. But for now, I want to get into this with you a little bit, Jeff. And I think it's so cool. Even I'm looking at our split screen right now, and this itself is like such a cool modeling, like me and you right next to each other, like with all the different demographics from age to sexual orientation to skin color to background to all those kind of things, you know, coming together in one space to show people that we can do this. So I want to start actually.
I resent that you said age first.
Well, you know, age, we know we're spiritual age is nothing, you know what I mean? But
I'm teasing.
yeah, but you know, I think a place that I would love to start, Jeff, because I think stories tell a lot, and we'll get into your personal story soon, but I actually would love to start with any story that you want to share around a conversation and how you've been getting into conversations with people, and one that will really grab people's attention to help them understand how powerful this could be.
Yeah. Well, this year for me has been a year of conversations. That's what I have committed my life to in a somewhat honestly crazy, kooky way. And I'll just create a tiny bit of context before I share a few of those stories with you.
Go ahead.
So,
Yes.
at the behest of our mutual dear friend Jacob, I started writing a weekly column for Commune, and that gets distributed every Sunday. And it started as this kind of lighthearted romp, and it quickly became a 2,500 word sort of deep dive into all of the salient issues of 2020, of which there were many, from obviously COVID-19 to the reckoning around racial justice and in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, and then obviously the election, and so many other things that were so poignant in 2020. So I started writing these essays very innocently, but then quickly really started to use these as sounding boards for a lot of these complex ideas that were happening in our culture and our society. And I started including my personal email in every single one of these essays. And the essay goes out to about 1 million people. So it, just by the nature of how many people it goes out to, I would get a lot of responses. And they weren't all positive, to be honest. I mean, if you write, as you know, if you put yourself out there on issues that are complex and nuanced, and you write 2,500 words about them, you're bound to...
People are going to have something to say.
Yeah, people get their hackles up on a couple of them, and as they should. And of course, that was the point. So as people started to write in to me, some of the emails were honestly like very ego enhancing, and then some of them were just mean and invidious and didn't really... there wasn't really any room for response. But many of them were incredibly thoughtful, and but also found some fault with my reasoning or logic, or mostly infilled areas where I was deficient.
Yeah.
And on occasion, after a number of email exchanges with folks, I just gave people my phone number. In fact, one time I published my phone number on Instagram. I'm not totally sure that was a great idea, but and I started to then book phone calls and Zooms with people that did not agree with me on something, and I started to actually put that time reserved in my calendar on Mondays and Tuesdays, Tuesday afternoons, to just have these conversations. So
I want to pin some. I want to like pull a thread here with you a little bit, Jeff. So it's just really amazing, to me, to see how you so first of all, because I know you personally, and just to set this for everybody, like you've really personally done so much research and so much work and so much trying to understand all these different perspectives. And then even with all that understanding and research and reading and talking,
Yeah.
putting out the conversation and then getting hit back sometimes with people who are against what you're saying or have, critical things about what you're saying. And then you having to work through and actually stay present to hold a conversation with somebody. That's a really big deal because most people would be like, I read it, I got it, this, I know, I don't need to have a conversation. And then we would get angry and defensive. So how did you show up for these Mondays and Tuesday afternoons ready to
Yeah.
listen,
Well, it's an insightful point, Justin, because to be honest, I still have an inclination towards being defensive. Because as you say, I would put my heart and my soul into these, and honestly, tens of hours of research, and just to get back a comment that felt uh, flippant or not really taking in the entirety of the intention of what I was trying to say. But I really needed to move through that. And this is what I'll just say as a preface. Conversations are absolutely essential to instantiating the world that we envision, that world that John Lennon was dreaming of in that song Imagine that you just sang so beautifully. And really conversations just are the one thing that stand in between us, the human condition right now, and the world our hearts know is possible. So there's every reason to be having them. And they are also the most potent personal growth tool.
Yeah.
So there is also, honestly, a selfish reason to have them because you spiritually and personally grow through the process of having them. And one of the ways that you grow is by being able to, I mean, Viktor Frankl writes about this, many people write about this, to find that space between the event and your response to it. Or that is the central tenet of Stoicism, for example, which posits that oftentimes our feelings and emotions are reacting to the judgment of something and not to the event itself. So, I mean, obviously, this is why we meditate and we reflect and, we cultivate a sense of sort of internal serenity, is to locate that space between the event and our response to it. So as I would get these emails in that would sometimes be quite critical, over time I got much better at finding that space and saying, oh, okay, this is not really someone being critical of me exactly. This is someone actually trying to work out these issues for themselves, and that they've taken the time. And evidently, time is all we have. So they've taken the time to write me a long, thoughtful email. So just that right there is a reflection of care,
Yeah.
right?
This is amazing. And what's I want to name a couple things that you're saying here that our community will really relate to. So first of all, obviously pulling out the meditation topic, which we clearly talk about a lot here. And if you could see the chat, people are losing their minds right now. Like they're just like first of all saying, "Wow, you're a brave soul." And like they're so amazed and talking about this finding the space, but I think a few things. Number one, conversations, like really one of the things that I believe is that human beings, like the way that we're actually creating our reality is through language. Like we're creating our reality through the things that we're saying and talking. And I even love in the Bible, for example, it's like in the beginning was the word, so like the way that we're communicating is how we actually are sparking what we're creating in life. And so if we shut down these conversations, then we're actually limiting our ability to grow and evolve even amidst some of the differences that are happening amongst us.
Yes. And I mean, if you subscribe to the notion that we are spiritual beings having this temporary human experience, then in this human experience, we need to find ways in which to interact and communicate. And words are those vessels for emotions and feelings and sensations. And the more fluent we get with the administration of those words, the better that we'll be able to understand each other. And that doesn't mean you have to sit there and study the thesaurus all day.
Yeah.
That just means you actually have to spend the time to look clearly internally, to summon your emotions such that you can find the proper representations for them, and then be brave enough to have them. And part of being brave is actually also part of your actualization process, because I won't go too far into this, but for much of my life, I girded my identity in through the eyes of others. I
Mm,
needed the approval of others to have self-worth. And through the process of having these conversations, I have, in some ways, been able to eschew some of my ego, such that, like, that it's okay if people don't agree with me,
yeah.
you know? And that doesn't affect my self-worth. I don't have to people please all the time. In fact, mat- confrontation, thoughtful and respectful confrontation, is a reflection of maturity. And if we believe in the marketplace of ideas, which is kind of what liberal democracy is predicated on, then we can have these conversations such that the best ideas can then cream to the top. And
That's it.
so that's my hope.
Yeah, that's it. And I think what's really important to name right now is that even though the stories that I think you're going to share, many of them may be about these divides and having these conversations across what might be perceived as like political or racial or social, is that, and this is one of the things that we explore in the Healing Conversations course, is that this work, the actual work that we have to do to show up for something like a conversation across a political divide with a friend or a family member, are the same tools that you use all the way down to with your friends and your family around any topic that there seems to be a divide or an argument about, and even sometimes the places that we're divided inside of our own selves. And so inside out, we're using these tools to actually make a pathway forward. You want to share a story, Jeff?
Yeah, let's get into a story. And
Cool.
so, and you're right, a lot of these will be reflective of the political invective, that we live in this incredibly politically polarized time. And of course, we're both on a share that common mission to bridge that chasm. So around July 4th, 2020, I was writing a lot about race because I was obviously thinking about that a lot. And I wrote an article called Interdependence Day, and I released it on July 4th, or
I
maybe July
remember
5th.
this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously it's a play on Independence Day. And I used a kind of a bit of a clumsy metaphor of the highway to illustrate a context in which we are completely interdependent. Like, no, you don't discriminate against a car because it's white or red or black or whatever. You and everyone's destiny is actually intertwined. No one gets downtown faster than anyone else, and reckless behavior often results in a wreck, to be honest. And so it's a clumsy metaphor, but it is one that I used to illustrate that we actually, our destinies are bound. And our liberation is bound. If you believe in the notion that I can't be free unless you're free, well, let's look at those examples that actually instantiate themselves in our reality. And I used that one. And I got a response from a woman. I'll just call her Christina right now, just to give her some personhood, um, who really resented the use of the term Independence Day. She was a Black woman, and she made a very forceful and honestly incredibly thoughtful case for the fact that she never received her independence on July 4th, 1776, or her ancestors never did, despite what it said on that parchment that all men are created equal. We have never lived up to our highest principles. So Independence Day was a term that should be expired because it does not apply to all people. Now, of course, my first reaction was like, I'm just trying to write an article about
Right.
people's interdependence and about how we can be as quote unquote one, as naive as that sounds. But, I heard her, and I also used the phrase within that essay, I believe, of founding fathers, which of course rings of all sorts of patriarchy. But it is a term that we share to find sort of a common understanding of
How the United
reality,
States
right?
started. Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So I we exchanged a few emails, and I said, "Here's my phone number. Just call me." And and in a way, it was sort of maybe like a dare because I hadn't given anyone my phone number at this juncture. Um, and I was like, "Okay, let's see. Let's talk this out. Let's see
So
if you're
here we
brave."
are. Here we are,
Yeah,
July 2020, like middle of protests, 4th of July week, and you have this black woman on the other line of your email who is upset and has given a
yeah.
long thing, and you're like, call me. I'm just like, dude, I'm just like, I don't know. I would not even do that. So, like, I'm so amazed. Okay, what happened next?
So she called me, and I picked up, and I don't think I uttered a word for 70 minutes.
Wow.
And she told me her entire life story. It actually had nothing to do with the article. And as she was telling her story, um, I mean, it was compelling, to be honest. I was compelled by her personal story, uh, and it was fraught with all sorts of obstacle and difficulty and triumph and beauty and joy. But I started to mentally take notes of things that we actually shared and had in common. Like she had driven across country a bunch, and I had done that a lot after college. My car broke down in Texas once. Turns out her car broke down in Texas once too. Two very different potential results from that could have stemmed from that. She was born in Chicago. I was born in Chicago, and I just started kind of like casually kind of enumerating these in the background. And finally, I think she just got tired, and I was like, "Oh, that's amazing! Thank you so much for being brave enough to call me, first of all. But your story is incredible." And we started talking about all these things that we shared in common, and it was just like we had popped the balloon of outrage. It just went away, and eventually, she just started to cry, and I started to cry too, because of course, what had brought us together was this confrontation. But despite our differences then and now, we really found so much common humanity, and we shared so much. And then once that had happened, and we were speaking from a whole different place, we started talking more specifically about the article. And I started listening to what triggered her. And after that conversation, I just decided that there are some terms and some words that are worth expiring. And I wasn't ready to expire Independence Day because I hold that as a dream
Yeah.
that one day we do have the fortitude and the will to align our works and actions with our highest principles and fulfill the promise of that dream that America holds. But I was willing in my writing and in my speech to expire uh, the phrase founding fathers, because I heard it, and I recognize that there were other words throughout history that have been expired for good reason. And So
And
she
why
brought me.
founding fathers? Why that decision? Like, what got you to understand? Just for the people here who are listening who use it, like, what was the expiration reason for you?
Well, in a way, it was to honor her bravery.
Yeah,
So there was a personal reason, but I also feel that that term, the paternalism of it, the that how that we have been a country grounded in patriarchy or a world grounded in patriarchy, and that patriarchy seeks to always find efficiencies in the name of commodification and not value some of the more human principles that potentially a matriarchy might value. There's just another, and I just found another suitable way to talk about it, where I
yeah,
just now I say the framers. That's it. I say the framers of our country or the framers of our founding documents, and I don't have to use the word fathers.
yeah.
And that's not for me. That didn't feel like I was like succumbing to cancel culture or anything. That just felt for me like a transition that I was ready to make
That's great. You
coming
should
out of that
see some of
conversation.
these. You should see some of these comments right now. They're amazing. I mean, so first of all, everybody's excited about the expiration of founding fathers. People are like, yes,
Okay.
there are some words worth expiring, and that is definitely one that's worth expiring. And then Carrie says, she goes, well, first of all, Wanda says, founding fathers, whose fathers? And then Carrie says,
Yeah.
and what did they find? Which I thought was great. So, just, but I think, Jeff, there's a couple things here that we talk about. Well, actually, before I go into that, let me let you put a pin on the end of this story. So go ahead. And so what happens from there?
Okay. So what I took away from this is something very simple, which is more than anything, people just want to be heard.
That's it. That's it.
And in a way, that gift for me to give was so small. So, I committed myself to trying to continue to give that gift. Um, and then subsequently, I have this relationship with Christina. That's not her real name, but um, that it is so warm now and hilarious and funny. And we text each other, and she sends me completely inappropriate YouTube videos, and we laugh, and we have a relationship that where we honestly often use humor as a conduit for the truth. Like we can actually get at gnarly shit because we can laugh about it first, and then we're like, get into it. So that was kind of those are the bookends on
It
that
is
particular one.
beautiful. And, people are loving this here. And I think one of the things, and everybody's writing it in over and over, people just want to be heard. People just want to be heard. And there's a couple things that I know that we talk about in the Healing Conversations course that you modeled here just so beautifully in the story that I want to make sure I pull out and name for people. So one was the creating the safe container of connection first. Right? So creating like all the studies that have happened on, how you can start to come together in these kind of spaces, talk about the fact that the best way that you can find a way through is to create a safe container that feels like it has empathy and connection inside of it first. And so if you can find that connection space first, which you did, you were noting, like, look at all these things that we actually have in common. And once you did that, and then you said something that somebody typed in so beautifully, popped the balloon of something. I can't remember the word that you said.
Outrage.
Outrage. Yeah, that was it. Pop the balloon of outrage. Then there was this space for you to hold the conversation in. And the second thing that you talked about being her just wanting to be heard, right? I love the way that you framed listening. You said, this is a gift that I want to keep giving, And so often we go into conversations, all we're thinking about is what it is that we need to say versus the other half of it of how much it is that we actually need to hear and that we need to listen, not just focus on the point that we're trying to get across. So I love all the modeling that happened here, Jeff, in this, and now you and Christina have your fun relationship.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've started to think about as listening to understand and not listening to respond.
That's it. And this goes into the tip, one of the main tips that I know that we talked about before this, that I think is really important. You may have another story to illustrate this, but around when you're talking to somebody and you're listening, how do you start to ask the question behind the argument that you're saying? So what do you mean by that? Because this is a big topic.
Yeah, so I often experience, as I'm sure everybody does, the modern political invective where people are entrenched in one particular polarized ideology. And you can almost apply this thought experiment to any issue, but you could use immigration, for example, where, you know, like the right has the the Republicans or the right or the conservatives have a particular issue around immigration, and they sort of look down their nose at liberals and say, like, you know, you're the party of chaos, and you're letting criminals into our country that are perpetrating crimes and stealing our jobs, and like, how dare you? And there's all this indignation being thrown in that direction, and like, we need law and order, and all the typical
The typical
immigration
conversation.
policy talking points that happen on the right. And then
Yeah.
you have the same, or different, but entrenched opinions on the left that looks at, with the same moral indignation at the right and says, you are all xenophobes, and, we are a country of immigrants. And unless were brought here, your family was brought here as a slave, or you're a Native American, then you are an immigrant, and we have a statue in a harbor with an Emma Lazarus poem on it, all this kind of stuff. And this debate that happens is rarely leads to any profitable conclusion. And so what I started to try to do with issues like immigration and others, and honestly, this is very inspired by a friend of mine named Charles Eisenstein that we worked with on Commune, was to ask the question behind the debate. So in this particular case, you would ask this question, that what are the ground conditions that would precipitate a woman or a family or a man to uproot from their own country in which they have an identity, to go to a foreign land with a foreign language, who likely doesn't even want them, with no assurance that your life will be any better? What are the ground conditions that precipitate that kind of decision? And talk about popping the balloon of outrage. Like, even if you're in the most vehemently contested argument with someone across the aisle about immigration, if you pose the question that way, oh man, all of a sudden you're behind the whole issue,
Yeah.
and you've grounded it in some kind of shared moral framework.
Did you all feel that? Like, did you feel just even the shift of the energy when Jeff asked that question and how powerful that is? I think everybody kind of felt that. I just like made me close my eyes. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, and I think then from that place of shared moral and ethical framework, one can then work together around actually effectuating solutions.
A solution that actually matters because you're asking the right questions now. You're asking a higher quality question.
Yeah, like, why would one want to come? What are the conditions that exist within that country, politically, culturally, economically? To what degree are we responsible for those, if at all? I mean, you start to unpack a whole world of exploration that can lead to such a much clearer picture of solutions and, honestly, just ethical and moral answers. So, and discussion that feels humanizing again.
You give
So
another great example on this around just because I want people to really start to understand this. I've heard you give another really good example around abortion. Can you give that same framing so people can feel that example too?
yeah, sure. I mean, on the right, or if you if you are anti-abortion or you know right to life, um, you generally look at the left as with the feeling of how could you not honor the sacredness of human life? And there is a moral indignation about that, around that. And that is a deeply held moral conviction that someone that informs why someone feels that way. And on the left, you have something similar where they look at the right and they say, how can you not respect the right for a woman to make decisions about her own body? That is a deeply morally held conviction for someone who believes in reproductive freedom. So both of these sides are almost unassailably moral. But again, if you take a moment to ask the question behind the debate, what you get at is what are the conditions that would precipitate a woman to actively choose to terminate a pregnancy? Like, what are the conditions in which that woman is living from an economic perspective? I mean, was she a victim, heaven forbid, of rape or incest? Was she never had any, is she in an abusive relationship? Does she have no financial wherewithal to support a child? I mean, all of these like real human issues that are so deep that necessitate compassion.
Yeah.
And again, if you're then start to ask that question, no matter how vehemently entrenched someone is on the other side, all of a sudden there's a place to have a shared moral and ethical framework.
Yeah.
It's all of that. The invective begins to dissolve, like the vitriol dissipates, and all of a sudden you're talking on a very human level.
This is just so powerful, and the chat, you should see what's just happened here is amazing. And I think this is so important, like you're saying, Allison. Asking the questions behind the debate shifts the energy. We understand that when we're asking the right questions, then compassion can arise, right? And so and all the reasons people are even just saying here in the chat box there's women in here, like my mom, she's like, did birth control just fail? Did it not work? And
Right.
like
Yeah.
all these different components that happen. And so I love that when we go to the condition, though, what I'm really getting to is even the kind of solutions that we can have when we go to the deeper argument behind, or the question behind the argument, is a solution that is emergent based upon that could potentially encompass everybody's desires, which really in both cases I believe is a desire to create a world, like let's just say for the immigration example, a world that is more safe and just, where people are safe where they are, and I'm sure many other things. And for abortion, it could lead to a conversation that has us talk about things that could prevent women from being in situations, from having to make this decision so frequently in the first place. And so, anyway, there's a lot that can unpack, that can happen there.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, with abortion, everyone shares the goal of minimizing the amount of abortions.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be debatable.
No.
Uh, and I mean, you know, there have just been so many of these heart-wrenching, heart-opening, mind-opening conversations that I've had, and again, I mean, I really just I can't um, recommend them enough, just because they are a personal growth tool. If your only motivation is just to become a more self-actualized person, then just, do it, take
Yeah.
a chance and do it. I mean, I was very, very critical of President Trump. I wrote a lot of articles that were very critical of him, and that was a risk, I suppose, to do that as part of my business. Um, but I felt that it was a risk that I needed to take. But coming out of that, I got a lot of emails from Trump supporters, and and in my critique of Trump, I was always incredibly careful to show a tremendous amount of compassion for the people that he gave agency in my critique of him. And I find him to be the confection of sin, just to be clear. Um, but that, but so I started to engage with a number of Trump supporters, and some of them would just write me in with like 100 memes, and there was no discussion to have. Um, but there was one conversation that then I had 3 or 4 phone calls with this one woman who was from Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, which is a rural county um, in Pennsylvania. And again, there was a lot of listening, especially at the beginning, in order to build a container of trust. And Sue, I mean, she's a single mom. She's got 2 kids. She works 2 minimum wage jobs, one at Burger King, one at Home Depot. Her town is basically boarded up. It's totally opioid ridden. It's everything that one might expect about the nightmarish sort of heartland of our country. And she was hustling and scrambling at every moment of her life to make ends meet for
Yeah.
her kids. And I'll tell you, Justin, the thing that she resents more than anything is being dubbed an ignorant racist, not for any reprehensible act, but just for her politics.
Mm.
And she,
So she was a Trump supporter. I want to be clear here for everybody. So she's a Trump supporter, and the thing that she hates the most is people instantly calling her racist because of those politics and all
right.
this stuff. And I love the stage that you set for us of like working at Burger King, these 2 jobs, like town all boarded up. So continue on. How did this unfold for you?
Yeah. Well, in, I wrote an article about privilege. And a lot of the most of my articles are based in sort of biographical nonfiction. So I use the kind of madcap adventures and stories of my family and myself. And I wrote an article about privilege, about me taking my 3 daughters to a protest march in Los Angeles, and about kind of my experience in my kind of own personal moral reckoning and inventory around the privileges that I have accrued from by the mere chance of being white and male and a whole bunch of other things, to be honest. And she took offense to that article, um, because she doesn't feel an iota of privilege. Now, whether or not she would she that she would have some benefit if she was pulled over on a highway because she is white, that exists. I mean, that just exists as a reflection of data.
Yeah.
But she said, Jeff, there is no police where I live. There's no police here. And guess what? I don't feel any privilege, nor do I feel even remotely guilty of what my great 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 grandfather might have or might have not done. And if you think that one group of people in the United States or anywhere in the world has a monopoly on privilege, then you've got your head up your ass. I mean, these are her words, okay? So it did require me to do a lot of soul searching and thinking, and this is one of the reasons that I love you is that we can engage in these really tricky conversations where one turn of phrase that is clumsy, you know, might invoke all sorts of rebuke. But, like you've thought and unpacked the notion of privilege in a way that I think is profound. And I've been fortunate enough to take your privilege assessment. Um, and, I think, part of that assessment or the purpose around that assessment is, recognizing that there are different forms of privilege.
Yeah.
And one primary form is the color of your skin. And there are many other forms of privilege, uh, from wealth to able-bodiedness to education and all of the other things that one might be able to avail themselves of. So, it
So
was like,
how does that connection come around? Because I know I felt the trigger, and I've already known this story, and people in here they're just like, hold on a minute, you know what I mean?
I
So
know.
how does this
So,
come around?
so, so for me, I think what I took out of that is that a more equitable and okay, the road to a more equitable and just world will not be paved with shame.
That's it. That's it.
And you talk about this. I mean, people, and this is the tightrope that we're walking, because people need to be accountable for their words and their actions and their works in this life, and they need to be called forward, as you say, and not always called out.
Yeah.
That we should be debating ideas and not always debasing people. That we
That's
should be eradicating ideas and not erasing history. I mean, all these things. So, um, and just practically, if we are going to pass HR1 or the John Lewis voting rights law or the Dreamers law, all of these laws that have been passed by the House, honestly, then the only way that that's actually going to happen and we're going to instantiate a more equitable and just world is by creating greater consensus around these ideas. And I just don't, I mean, not only do I feel that, I feel that it's also practical to try to eschew shame as a weapon,
yeah.
um, and try to again call people forward,
Yeah.
and you can do that in a way that doesn't forsake accountability.
This is amazing, and everybody's typing in these words here that you said, Jeff. The road to a more equitable and just world will not be paved with shame, and it's not. And I love that you're saying like I think and I feel, but yeah, we think and feel, and it's like totally science based, like it's evidence based that we cannot pave our way forward or start walking forward, which is really the direction that I believe most of us want to go if we keep shaming and blaming people. And this is why what I have to keep coming back to, is when we are having conversations with people, we have to get really real with ourselves about what is it that we actually want as the desired outcome of this conversation. What do you really want? Is your ego just want to be heard? Because if that was the case, and I know we all need to be heard and we all need to be listened to, but I'm not saying it in that context. It's like if you got on the phone, Jeff, with these women and your intention was, I just want to be heard. I just want to make my point, which is what so many of us get across. I just think that I don't care if you voted for Trump, I don't care. There's no way forward. Then what's your goal? Is your goal to take us forward? Is your goal just to be heard? If your goal is to take us forward, then that approach isn't gonna work. So that's where our mindfulness practice comes in. That's where finding that space that you talked about comes in. Where you have to go, okay, felt the trigger. What do I want to do? And how can I become skilled in actually having these conversations to help build connection and take us forward? So I just love this. So what happened with this woman because I know you said you talked to her multiple times. So how did that all unfold?
Yeah, we're still in touch. Right around Inauguration Day, I launched a platform called Make America Purple, which is it's actually very based on the Pandemic of Love platform.
Yep.
Yeah, where it's just a very simple platform where if you align more as a conservative, you enter your name in one field, and if you identify more as a liberal, you enter your name in another field. And the only thing this platform does is match people in conversation. And then we send out guidelines around nonviolent communication, and then we send up follow-ups and et cetera. And we've now completed about 200 conversations. So not a huge amount, but
a good amount. It's significant amount.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, the trickiest part, to be candid, is getting conservatives to agree to have a conversation, because we have 2,500 people in the wait list who have identified as liberals. And this was part of my continuing conversation with Sue, is that, like, listen, Sue, we don't see eye to eye on everything, but we're cool. We can have a conversation, and we respect each other, and we listen to each other. So let's model that to the rest of the world. And I want you to come on the podcast, and we'll model it for people. And she won't do it. But I'm getting closer. She's like, obviously, and I respect this. She's like, Jeff, you have the power there to edit anything that you might want. But that's where I'm trying to get with her. Is to really be able to model.
You might be able to even have some of the people who've done Make America Purple to come on and model too, which would be really, really awesome. For people who want to go, I want to make sure I don't give them the wrong link. If people want to go to that, it's makeamericapurple.org, right? Or is it .com? .org.
No, you got it. Yeah. And a lot. She really helped me understand. I mean, the euphoria that I felt as Biden got elected over and over and over and over again between November 3rd and January 6th. It's sort of decreasing levels of euphoria each time. But that was the euphoria that she felt in 2016.
Yeah.
Now, many of us have a really hard time understanding that. And this is a whole other discussion of, why Trump gave her and many in her community a sense of agency, and honestly, a sense of community.
Yeah.
And it was, to be honest, in many ways, less about him and more about her connection to her community in the context of him that was so important to her. But that's a long, hard problem to unpack that we won't unpack here. But I do have a greater understanding for her and people.
And that's all we can ask for, is at this moment in time, especially with what we're here to do, is the greater understanding, this greater understanding, and even creating that space is how we'll start to move on. Jeff, I'm looking at the time, and before we start to lose people here, I want to tell them a little bit more about the Healing Conversations course, but I wanted to just give you a second to talk about maybe why you're excited about this course. And you brought me in to teach on Commune for my first course, which I'm very excited about to do with you all. So just give you a chance to speak about it, and then I'll show them what's coming, the first sneak peek at it.
Yeah. Well, from the very, very beginning of Commune, my whole goal was to bridge the notion of personal wellness and societal well-being. That it wasn't enough just to do your yoga and drink your green juice, that if you were not bringing that out into the world, then that was there was an emptiness to it, to be honest. And or I won't say that, that's critical. But my goal was to make that connection. And so we've made a lot of meditation courses, a lot of yoga courses, and those are very key to people feeling well. But I think one of the reasons I'm just so excited about this is this is a manifestation of that original vision
Yeah.
of really combining the inner work with the outer work. And and I couldn't be luckier to have met you.
Well, this is, I think, really the heart, one of the heart places of where you and I truly align is seeing the personal work and how it affects society and community and collective. And so without further ado, Kingdom family, you're going to be the first ones to actually see this because it doesn't show on social media until Tuesday. Here is the trailer, the preview for the new course with Commune, Healing Conversations. This is where the healing begins. What we are is connected to one another. Our actions are what end up creating this web of reality. You have the resilience, you have the capacity, you have the capability, and now you have the tools. So there it is. We're very excited to share this course with you all. And I'm going to put the link and actually just tell you a couple more things about it. So I'm going to put a special link in the chat box for you all right now to sign up for the course. And what's most exciting about this, and this is what I love about the accessibility of Commune, is when you go to that link, the first 5 days of the course are completely free for everyone. So you get to go through the whole first 5 days of the course with no cost, with no payment, with no nothing, just to get into it and see if you like it. And then if you do, then you can continue on to the final 5 days of the course as well. Uh-oh, somebody just said, check the link, it doesn't work. Ah, that's weird. It was just working. Hold on a second. I'll grab the link again in a moment for you all. I'm sorry. But Jeff, can you say on here what that main link was? Do you happen to remember that by chance?
Yeah, sure. It's the one that works for me right now is one commune spelled out, commune.com/healing.
Okay. /healing. And then give me 1 second. I'll put this special link in for you guys and let me make sure it actually works. I might have copy and pasted it wrong somehow. That's weird. My my affiliate link is not working even when I click on it in the email, but it's okay. It was working earlier before we tried it. So I will make sure you all get a link in your email. I think Kajabi's down.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
I
cool.
can't get it either.
Yeah, well, perfect timing for that to be down. It was working before, but that link, I'll email you all that link because that link actually does work. For some reason, the website is actually down right now, and it's not Commune's fault. It is actually the platform that we all run everything on. So I have a good feeling that, because I run all my stuff on there too, and my website's down as well. So thanks, Kajabi. But we love
good timing.
Yeah, good timing. But let me tell you all a little bit about the course, and I promise I'll send you all the link in an email this week. But just a couple more things that you guys should know since you can't go to the link to actually see it right now. So healing conversations, what we actually talk about here is how to engage in difficult conversations with friends and family, how to really tenderly uncover and heal past wounds that you've had in a way that prevents negative cycles from unintentionally repeating. So you all know that I always say, what doesn't heal repeats. So how do we go into some of these wounds so we don't keep the cycles repeating in our personal lives and societally? We then give you tools to liberate yourself from the fear that often keeps you silent when you need the strength to speak up. So often we want to speak up and we're afraid and we don't know how. So we talk about the tools to liberate you from that, as well as guidelines for setting healthy boundaries and learning to enforce them. Boundaries are a big conversation. I've talked about it here before on the Kingdom. We do an amazing deep dive in the Commune course. And then we talk about how to be with emotions like anger and rage and shame and guilt and fear and perfectionism and confusion, and how we turn some of those emotions into power so that we can learn how to reach across divides without the fear of getting it wrong, and ultimately learning how to create mindsets of confidence and conviction when you speak to yourself and others. And lastly, one of the things that I'm most excited about in this course is we leave you with some templates for conversations that help you support some real honest and healing dialogue. We talk about how to call people forward instead of how to call them out, and how to have these conversations in a real way that make a lasting impact in your own life. And so, Jeff, I just want to thank you for having me, create this course with you all. It's so beautiful and so incredible. And I promise everybody I'll make sure a link is in the show notes and description of the podcast. If you're watching the recording, it'll be in the description of the YouTube video or the blog page. And for everybody who's with us live, I'll make sure you all get a link in your email inbox as soon as the link is right back up. So Jeff, before we close, is there anything else you'd like to add or just say to people? I know there was so much we wanted to get into, and I know we didn't get all the way there. So is there anything else you want to share with the Kingdom family?
Yeah, I'll leave you with this one technique that I have found to be really, really powerful, not only just to find a sense of shared humanity, but also, again, as a personal growth tool to make one a better listener and inevitably more humble, and more inquisitive and more knowledgeable and wise. And it has kind of a strange name. It's called steel manning, but it's sort of based on the idea of a straw man argument, which is a straw man is easy to knock down, but a steel man is very difficult to knock down. And really all this technique is connecting with someone with whom you disagree, employ really, really active listening, and then out loud back to them, reiterate the best parts of their position. And this will not only help you find some humanity in their position, but it fortifies your own opinion because you have to connect to the best counter argument of your own opinion. And also, of course, it really does, I think, bring out some elements that we're all trying to cultivate in our own life, more humility,
I love
the
this.
ability to ask why, the ability to be wrong.
I
Yeah.
think, you know what, this is a good, every single week on the Kingdom, we give what's called a power action. And I think this is a really good practice and action combination that we can take. And I just want to take a second with everybody right now to just model this steel manning thing with you, Jeff. So if you can like set us up with a scenario, we can do it. So we can, I know this is like on the fly, but just some kind of scenario we can pretend mock for people so they can see how this works.
Sure. Well, we'll have to. I don't know what we disagree on.
Well, let's pretend. Let's just pretend we disagree on something, and I'll take
Okay.
the fake opposing side.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll play the role of. I'll pick an issue that's in the news, like Dr. Seuss. How's that? Are you
Oh
familiar with
gosh,
the
yes,
Dr.
yes,
Seuss issue?
yes, yes. I learned it with your house. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. Okay, so let's talk about. So people who don't know,
So
Dr. Seuss setting the stage. They pulled a handful of Dr. Seuss original books, not the ones that are popular. They're like more obscure books from print, from continuing to be published because there was a lot of pretty crazy racist undertones and stuff inside of it, and so that created this huge drama. So go ahead.
okay. So I'll take the position that these books shouldn't have been discontinued,
Oh,
just
okay.
for the sake
All
just for
right.
the sake of argument.
Cool. Okay.
That I think we should have kept these Dr. Seuss books in print because I think culture and art is despite the fact that it hasn't kept up with evolving cultural and social ideas, is important to maintain, because when we face our history, it's easier to learn from it. So there's my
Mm.
position for canceling Dr. Seuss, for not canceling Dr. Seuss.
Okay, so do I now steel man first, or do I say my position first? How do I do
So
that?
now you try to reiterate my argument back to me,
Yep. Okay.
and then you integrate the parts of it that you think are valid into your own position.
Cool. So what I'm hearing you say, Jeff, that's really important, I think, to name and that I can understand is that you think that it's really important that we keep these kind of books, no matter what kind of content they have in them, available for print because people have the right to see them, and also so that we can make sure when we look back at our history, it's not erased. And the best way to actually learn from our history is for us to be able to see that it's there. And so if we can't see that it's there, then we can't learn from it and we can't grow. Is that right?
I mean, brilliant. You actually elucidated the position that I gave better than I elucidated it. So that was
Cool.
amazing. Yeah.
So that's me, even though I don't fully agree with Jeff. What's interesting is hearing his argument. I do agree with that last point, that if we can't look at our history, then we can't grow from it. So if I was going in my own argument, I would say something like this. You know, if I was taking the side of, no, these books should be out of print, but incorporating part of Jeff's position rather than argument position, I would say, you know, I think it's really important that books like this, especially from authors that are so heavily sought after and that we've popularized and kind of put on this throne, and especially that children are reading, I think it's so important that we pull some of these books out of print because the children don't have context of where this was in history when they just pull it out of a bookshelf and start reading it and they see something racist. But you know, the books are still available, and Dr. Seuss has many books that are still available. And I think that there's a lot of really amazing ways that we can look back at our history in a way that protects the context for children so that they're not confused, so that we can learn from them. How's that? I tried to integrate
Well,
your argument.
yeah, and of course this can keep going,
Yeah.
because I think that the context of children that you bring into this volley
Yeah.
is incredibly important, because you're right, they don't have the context. And so what it becomes is sort of a perpetuation of history through one lens,
Yeah.
which is obviously a problem.
Yeah,
So
and then we
anyways,
can
this is
continue
great.
going back
Yeah.
and forth, and we can see how
Yeah.
that actually evolves things. Like, because I wasn't just trying to argue with Jeff and say, no, like we have to take these books out of print. You know, I was able to actually hear, oh no, I think he's right about this history concept, and then that continues to evolve. And he thought I was right about the children thing, so now we're gonna bring that in, and you can see how doing this, you know, steel manning method rather, that we can actually find a way to have a conversation that creates space for both of us to still have our own opinions. And it doesn't mean that either of us are going to ever agree. It just means that we were able to have a conversation, which is the part of it that actually is the healing in the first place. So,
Yeah. Well, let's agree on coming up with a better word for it, because steel
yeah,
manning
I
somehow
don't
is
like
so
that. I
weird.
know it sounds like some
I
like
know.
sports technique. So
Yeah.
I'll tell all of you, I'm going to put the link. It's still not working for me. I can see some of you were able to get access to it somehow. So I'm going to put the link in the chat box for the course for you again. And what I'm going to request that you all do, if you are interested in looking at it more, is to copy and paste that and go back to it a little bit later today. I'm sure it'll be up probably as soon as we close out the kingdom, because that's the way technology is working today. And some of the questions that people ask is like, when does it start? When does it end? What happens? You can start, the course is kind of self-paced. You can go in whenever you want, and you just go in, and there's 3 lessons every day. It's about 20 to 30 minutes of content every day. So it's short and sweet with a little workbook, and you go through it at your own pace. And there's a community that actually is a place where you can have discussion and conversation, and we'll all be in there kind of talking. And yeah, people were saying, I don't get the steel man term. Steel man is like, you're stealing their argument and using it for your own, right? Did I get that, or is that wrong?
Well, it actually comes the etymology is in straw man. So a straw man
Oh,
argument, which you
right.
might have heard of, is like, you know, I might say, well, I think, you know, immigrants should be allowed into this country, but only if it's legal. And then you would say in retort, oh, that's just racist. So you're basically refuting my argument with an ad hominem, like an attack, that doesn't really address the point that I'm making in the first place. So what you're doing is you're putting up a straw man because a straw man is just so easy to knock down.
Ah,
So this is actually taking a more muscular man, a steel man,
yeah.
and propping that up, which is much harder to knock down. So that's kind of where I
Yeah.
believe the etymology of the actual word or technique is.
I don't
Still
like
doesn't.
either of them.
I don't
Yeah,
like
we'll
it that
go.
much either.
We'll start with like just an integrative conversation. So
There we
Jeff,
go.
you know, I just want to thank you so much for coming and having this healing conversation with all of us today. Community, give it up, give some love to Jeff for coming here. And Jeff, thank you for just being a brother and a friend and a healer of your own in your own right, and for sharing the words and having the conversations in such a vulnerable and powerful way. It's really paving the way and leading for all of us as we make America purple.
Yeah.
So
I hope so.
amazing.
Thank
So
you, Justin.
thank
Such an
you.
honor, such a pleasure.
Thank you, Jeff. And for the rest of you who are still here with us today, thank you for staying and hanging on. I have something very special for the end of our conversation right now. I talked about Believe, this song, Believe, that we have released. It is my next single, which I'm so excited about that we've released. It's on Spotify and Apple Music and everywhere that music is listened to or able to be listened to. And if you stream Believe, if you play the song at all on your phone, 100% of the streaming royalties go directly to families and children who've lost their parents to COVID for the entire month of March. We're gonna make our first goal 10,000 streams by the end of this coming week, and then we're gonna continue to expand and go from there. And so what I'd like to do for you all right now is actually play you the live performance that we did last night on Love Over Fear so that you can see my live performance of Believe before you go listen to it live. I love you all so much. I'll be back after this is over. This is Believe by Justin Michael Williams. Me. This is Believe. I don't wanna believe when I got the news that you would leave, that I would never hug you. No, 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 I'm not ready. I'm not ready to let you go. I don't understand how this is part of the plan. Can you tell me why? No, 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 I'm not ready. I'm not ready to do this alone. So go ahead, dry your eyes, 'cause you were born to fly, and you will be alright. How can I believe that it was you I felt in the breeze, that you were right beside me, telling me that you're with me, watching me like an angel now. Don't worry, I'm always here in your heart, guiding you here in the dark. When you can't see me, I'm pushing you to grow stronger, pushing you to grow stronger now. I'm here, believe. Oh, would you believe? It feels though I've been released from all my worries. I wanna know
that you were right there guiding, pushing me to grow stronger. I pray that I can grow stronger now, 'cause I lift you up, I praise your name. Oh, no, I trust in you, we rise again. Would you believe all this happened to me? But I'm still not broken. No, they can't bring us. No, they can't take us down. Didn't realize when my whole world ended overnight that you were right there guiding me, pushing me to grow stronger, pushing me to grow stronger now. 'Cause I would you believe? Would you believe? Would you believe? Would you believe? All this happened to me, but I'm still not broken. No, they can't bring us. No, they can't take us down. I didn't realize that when my whole world ended overnight, that you were right there guiding, pushing me to grow stronger. I pray that I can grow stronger now. Now all I see in these photographs of you and me is how much you love me. I just wanna say thank you. I just wanna say thank you now. And I believe.
Let's believe, everybody. Let's believe. So I'm so grateful and so thankful for our community, that we're here supporting families, supporting one another, supporting each other's creativity, supporting each other's art, supporting this whole community that we're building. And I see you in the comments. I just want to give you a second to just feel that song, because I know it brings up a lot, especially for any of us who have had loss. And I just really wrote it for this moment. And the words, would you believe all this happened to me, but I'm still not broken. And I believe this about us as an individuals, and about us as a collective. There's been a lot that we've gone through throughout all of history, that our ancestors have gone through, but we're still not broken. And right there, when we thought the world ended overnight, our ancestors and all that came before us are right there guiding the way, individually, collectively, and together we'll continue to rise. So I'd love for you all to stream that song as much as you can, not only because it obviously helps my numbers, but I don't really care about that much, but what I actually care about is the fact that we will actually, in your sleep, be able to directly give money to children and families who's lost their parents to COVID. And the streaming numbers will go up, and we'll get more positive music out into the world in a meaningful way. So I love you, family. We rise together. We'll continue rising together. And thank you for being here for our session on the power of healing conversations. Again, I'll have the link to our course in all the descriptions and everything. We thank Jeff Krasno for being with us today. And like we're together every single week, this is Justin Michael Williams signing out. I pray for your liberation, and may we all be well.